She needs a date to her best friend's gala. He wants to settle down. Can they get past their hang-ups to see that they should be together? This is the premise of The Accidental Swipe by me, Y.M. Nelson. This steamy contemporary romance features Jason and Fortune, two people who've given up on love and are urged to use an online dating app to find someone. When they find each other, the attraction is undeniable, but their jaded outlooks on love based on past emotional hurt may keep them from getting together. The Accidental Swipe releases on July 25th, 2023. Go to ymnelson.com for all of the latest details. This is the Nerdy Romantics Podcast, and I'm your host, Y.M. Nelson. In this episode, we will recommend several romance novels that have differently abled main characters. This is part of our Who Gets an HEA series that focuses on different marginalized groups and their representation in romance. In today's episode, we're not only going to recommend several on the episode, we're also going to refer to a few more, which those will be in our show notes. This one is chock full of romantic novel goodness, but has no spoilers. So take a listen. Hello, Nerdy Romantics. Today we are recommending romances with differently abled main characters. So we're talking neurodivergent or on the spectrum, or they may be disfigured, they may be hearing impaired, they all find love. Let's talk about these particular romances and why we like them. We're, of course, going to give you title and author so you can go out and get these books, a little bit of what the book is about, and then we'll talk about why we like the story and why we like that representation. We're not forgetting all of you who love to know what that heat level is, so we are going to say if it is steamy or sweet or anything else. So I'm going to start it off here and talk about one that probably a lot of the audience already knows. It's called The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. If so, I am totally sorry about that. To me, it's kind of a book one, but as I look at her books, they are not in a series. They are all in the same universe, her first three books. The Kiss Quotient is the first. The Bride Test is the second. And she does have a third book out now, which the name is not coming to me, but it will be in the show notes. The Kiss Quotient is the female main character's story, Stella Lane, and she is a math genius. So much so that she's got this great job and she's making a lot of money on her algorithms. I love the fact that she is a math genius. She is a math genius, right? I love that. Yeah, she might be a math genius, but she needs a little help in the bedroom. She needs help not just with dating, but definitely with sex. She says, I'm not good at it. So she hires an escort, Michael, and he is part Vietnamese, part Swedish. His whole story has a background going on there. She hires him for help in the sex department. As a teacher, if you will. She even makes a bit of a lesson plan in one of the scenes. These are things that she wants to learn from him. Or as they, get to know each other, the agreement becomes a little bit more than an escort kind of thing. When that whole thing fails, it ends up being more of a teach me how to be in a relationship kind of thing. That whole evolution opens up their lives and we get to see their lives. So here Stella she has Asperger's, and so that keeps people from relating to her and keeps people from understanding her. Because Michael is an escort, he's like, I'm going to be a little patient here. And also, Michael is a little bit more understanding because of other secondary characters also that are around him. He unknowingly has, experience interacting with someone who's on the spectrum. I mean, obviously there are going to be ups and downs here, but what I really like about the KISS quotient is that I learned something. I'm not afraid to say I learned something. I learned something about Asperger's that I didn't know. And I didn't realize that I was actually learning about that. I also like the fact that the author is writing from a place of actually knowing, because she is on the spectrum as well. I think she has Asperger's as well. And she says this in her author's note. When I'm reading this, I'm getting kind of an authentic point of view here. So when I feel like I learned something, I feel like I learned something, right? Not just that I saw a stereotype of something and okay, we've absorbed this, but I feel like I've actually seen into the life of someone who actually has Asperger's, right? And that's what I love about it. But really, I'm going to say the story was pretty entertaining. I love the roller coasters. I love the fact that this book is not about a woman with Asperger's trying to find love, even though that's basically what it is on the surface. It's about these two people coming together. I learned too about a lot about Vietnamese culture that I did not know, because we meet Michael's family in this one. I really feel like I'm getting a slice of, even though these people are fictional, I feel like I'm getting a slice of life here. These people are very real to me. They feel authentic. They're written authentically. They are given whole characters, not just kind of, a caricature of somebody or a flat character. And so I really love that about this story. And it's funny, y'all. It's hilariously funny. As everyone knows about me, I love my steamy romances. I'm not saying nothing about the sweet romances. I'm not saying they're not good, but I love my steamy romances. And this one is steamy. This one is really steamy. It's not kicking up to, erotic level, but it is really steamy. We get more than a couple of sex scenes, if I remember this one. We get a few, and they're a little bit on the graphic side. They're not flowery or anything like that. Yes, we know what's going on there. And partly the reason for that, to me, the flowery language would not work here anyway, because Stella is very facts and very logic oriented. She's very straightforward and very blunt about things. And so to me, to just have that reflected in the love scenes just makes sense. You're not going to have flowery, poetic, whatever. You're going to have, okay, I feel this and I feel this really intensely. I might not know what I'm feeling right now, or maybe I do know what I'm feeling right now and I may be uncomfortable, or I may not be uncomfortable, or this may be great and I want to feel this again, kind of thing. And so that's a lot of the reason why I like the KISS quotient. There was a lot of talk when this book came out, because I believe this book came out around the same time as Fix Her Up. It has an illustrated cover. And so people were thinking, oh, nice light rom-com. And it is a romantic comedy, but it is not a light romantic comedy. It is steamy, but to me, if you like steamy, if you're not uncomfortable with that, it is so worth it because the story is so entertaining. And that again is The Kiss Quotient. Let's move on from maybe being on a spectrum. We will revisit that in this episode, but let's move on to one with physical differences. I'm talking about Beast by Pepper Pace. We've got Nerdy Romantic Dana on with us today to talk about that one.
Hello.
So, hey Dana. So I will say this background, y'all. I bought this book last year during Blackout the Book List kind of movement on social media. It was right after people found out how much Black authors were not making. And so we wanted to support them. So at first, I was buying this book because I knew it had been written by a Black female author and because Dana recommended it, y'all. Uh, and I bought it and I thought, okay, yeah, I'm down for this. But, Dana, you recommended it to me not just because it had been written by a Black author. It was more so because of the physical disformities that the main character has, right?
Yes.
So talk to us about this book.
So again, the book is called Beast, and it's by Pepper Pace. And just kind of a little bit of background. I don't want to go into too much detail. In fairness, I read this book several years ago, so I don't want to go into too much detail and then say something wrong. But basically, the background is this an interracial romance, and it features two main characters. One is a plus size Black female, and the other one is a disfigured white male. And so you got your interracial there. And then I guess in tune with what we're talking about here, we have a disfigured male. Now, one thing I guess that I want to talk about is when I looked at kind of what Pepper Pace was talking about when she wrote the book, it's supposed to be lightly based on Beauty and the Beast. So we all kind of know that story, a pretty girl trapped in a mansion on a hill with the Beast, who, if he has to make her fall in love with him in a certain amount of time, he wants to no longer look like a beast. I'll be honest with you, I did not really, I guess if she says lightly based, it's real lightly based.
Yeah.
Because to me, I didn't really feel that it didn't have that, hey, you've got to fall in love with me by a certain time so I can turn back. And none of that to me was there. So what you got was more of a character who looked beastly on the outside. And that is pretty much all I could see in terms of how it was based on it. So that aside, what I really liked and why I felt this is one I wanted to bring up for this particular episode of the podcast is because what Pepper Pace does, I feel like, really, really well is she's very true to the disability, right? So we don't get a character who's disabled because they have a limp. No, we're going to get an amputee or a person who's paralyzed, from the neck down. And I appreciate that because I think a lot of times, especially like in movies and things like this, we give, I don't know how else to say this, but the prettier side or maybe the less in-depth side of a disability.
Yes.
And there are a lot more struggles, I think, that don't get focused on because we do that. Because it's one thing to have to walk with a cane. It's another thing to have to put on a prosthetic leg. Like it's totally looks different, or not be able to afford a prosthetic leg, right? Because, just different things. So I think she goes there when other people, I think, just touch the surface. So I think that's what I really liked and why this book is the one I wanted to talk about here. And so what I'm referencing about this character is the main guy character. By the way, the two characters, Ashley is a Black female, and Christopher, he is actually a Marine, and what he's disfigured in, he actually has a bilateral cleft palate. Now, you may have seen pictures of babies having bilateral cleft palates. And usually from what I've seen, if they're young and they get it fixed, you may see like little evidence of it or a little bit of deformity, but nothing that would like really shock, I think, anybody. They've come a long way with that. It looks really good. But in this case, the parents at the time didn't have enough money to get Christopher surgery. And so the state ended up eventually getting him surgery because it started causing him breathing problems. And the description that Ms. Pace gives is so detailed. So it's not just cleft palate, it's a cleft palate that has affected his teeth. He is missing teeth. His face is actually smashed in. I mean, when you read the details, this is not that. You know what? I don't know if anybody has watched this movie. There's this movie called Beastly. And I think
Yes.
it's like a young adult, okay, doing the
Yes.
beast thing.
It
And
is.
so they make this guy ugly. But one of the things they do to make him ugly is to give him a lot of tattoos. In my world, that is not making him beastly, like, you know, in
Right.
comparison. So he was still, you know, conventionally beautiful in some ways. Now
Exactly. He was.
right. And so some of that, you know, and not to say that he was like, you know, there were some things, honestly, it looked like he had face jewelry on. But anyway, whole different subject. Reading this book and hearing how she describes him, that's definitely not the picture that I was getting of this beast character.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because when you look at the actual book cover for the character, I mean, this man is like, ooh, he's like Avenger built, you know, whatever. And he's wearing a hoodie over his head. So you don't actually see his face. But I felt like she gave such a good description that I knew this wasn't just, oh, you know, he has a scar from when he was younger on his face.
Right.
You know, he was truly disfigured. So the main character, Ashley, in terms of just, you know, I don't know, some people may consider she finds out she has diabetes. So a little bit about the character. Now, this is where, you know, I'm talking about how Pepper Pace, I think I loved how she did the Beast character, Chris character, in that it wasn't like what I'm used to reading. But I will say Ashley was a little bit more of what I'm used to reading, in that she was a plus size woman who had really low self-esteem. We have her exercising and working out and all that stuff, which is traditionally not something that I like, but I feel like the way it was done with the Beast character, because she goes up to him and she's like, oh, you know, I lost like weight, I'm down 3 dress sizes. And he like, yeah, that's great, whatever. I liked you how you were. The whole, like, he didn't care.
Yeah.
Really, you know,
right.
But it wasn't anything to him. Another thing that I really liked about how these characters were written is that they were, a lot of times with these type of romances, we get the over the top. You know, the guy always has big hands, and you know, he's all, you know, alpha and in charge, and he can. Pepper Pace doesn't write her characters, at least the ones I've read from her, like that. They're like real normal people. Sure, sometimes you may be alpha acting, but sometimes you're not. You know, and she allowed Christopher's sensitivity to come out and be there, and it just made it more of a touching kind of story. Now, I say all that and it may sound cute and touchy and nice, but talking about steaminess, I was really having a hard time with kind of how I wanted to say this, because to me, a lot of times when I think erotica, I think steamy is more important than story. In this particular book, I didn't feel that way at all. I definitely felt like story was the more important part. But the reason I was like, I don't know if I want to say erotica or not, is I'll be honest, some of the language may make you blush. It's not, and I don't mean just because they're having steamy sessions, but some of the language is pretty out there. So, you know, I'll put that out there. It's definitely, like, I wouldn't call it erotica, but some of the words would definitely show up in an erotica book. How about that?
Yes.
So I would just put it out like that. But again, I loved it. It felt like more like a real romance. I really enjoyed the characters. I don't want to tell you the end. I will say I was a tad bit upset about the end, but I think it kind of falls into that they were trying to get us to a happy ending place.
Yeah.
And so I think we kind of went back into the, we'll stand by for that. But I think this is a great book to read if you're looking to read about some differently able characters. And I think this one was really well written and I enjoy it. And I would say check out some of her other ones. I've read other ones. She's had characters in wheelchairs, characters who were blind. She even had, well, I won't go into that. But anyway, she has some really good books if you're looking for differently able people. And I think she writes those people very well.
Dana, definitely give me some of those titles after we finish recording this, and I will put those in the show notes.
Okay.
I'm going to make an honorable mention, of course, as well, too. So everybody make sure to go to ymnelson.com to see the show notes for this one, because we're going to put some other recommendations in that we're not going to talk about here. For this one, Beast by Pepper Pace, I agree with you about the erotic level. So this is from a romance writer perspective. There is a difference between, and you touched on it here, there's a difference between erotica and erotic romance. So erotica, you're right, Dana, the sex is more important than the story. But something can be erotic romance where the story, it's about the story and about the romance and not about the sex, but that the sex scenes are erotic level, as in they're saying stuff you would definitely not say in mixed company or
Exactly.
or anywhere near anybody, baby.
Yes.
You're definitely not gonna have like audio version of this book playing while you were in your
Oh
car
Lord.
with your family. No, it's not gonna happen.
No,
This
absolutely
is
not. But yeah,
definitely
that's a great point. I didn't
erotic
realize
romance.
that. So
Yeah,
thank you for that information. Yes.
and a lot of readers don't necessarily. We're just like, I want to read this sexy book. I want to read this whatever book. As writers and marketers, we have to know which category to put that in, because we know that Amazon doesn't like erotica, but they might be okay with erotic romance. A Sierra Simone, a Sylvia Day or Pepper Pace. So that's kind of the level, and I agree with you. It's erotic romance. It's a little bit more than steamy. So, if I'm saying kiss quotient is steamy, yes, this is more than that. I kind of agree with you. And everybody, we are going to have a plus sized Who Gets an HEA episode where we talk about plus size main characters. But I do want to say here, yes, the female main character, her being plus size and going to the gym, it initially did bother me. It bothered me so bad because of the reason why she went there, and because of her self-esteem. And I was like, we're reading this story again. Why do we have to read this story? I don't like this. However, though, that Pepper Pace, because she put in the diabetes angle and because she slightly changed her mindset a little bit, the character slightly changed her mindset when she realized she had diabetes. And it was more so, I'm going to work out, and not to give too much of the story away or anything like that. I'm going to work out because, of diabetes and, other reasons. but that's what made her weight loss a little more palatable to me, from experience and from other people's personal experience and stuff with that, especially for a woman. The fact that she lost the weight as fast as she did, that's what bothered me. After I was like, okay, so I'm getting over the fact, I like the fact that she shifted, but then as fast as she lost the weight, and I guess mainly it's because, she was actually doing something for her health, but I don't know, the timing of it kind of was like, is this authentic? But I will say overall, I like the fact that she kind of shifted that whole initial reason why she started to go to the gym.
And I do want to say, like, I'm not against plus size characters going to the gym, because I know I talk about this like with
I'm
other,
totally not either.
I'm totally for that. But why is it any more than like, I went to the gym? Why does it always have to kind of correlate with weight loss? Because
Right.
a lot of people go to the gym. I've worked out and haven't lost a darn thing. So like, it doesn't always, and sometimes that's not the goal. It's just to maintain health. And so that's just but you're right. As it went on, she had better reasons for what she was doing. And, it was truly about health. And so that was fine. But yeah, I was just like you, because it seemed very soon in the book oh, here she is, woe is me. And she doesn't like herself. And now she's going to work out to try to change who she is.
Right.
So at first I was like, oh Lord. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. The plus size women were cringing a little bit, but we're getting over it because we see that there's trying. I also realized that everybody's story is a little bit different, and what everybody is trying to actually show is a little bit different. So I give a little bit of leeway for that, and two, I mean, let's be honest, it's been so long for us to even come to this point where, we're seeing plus size women, not go into a book thinking, I must lose weight for a man. And then by the end of the book, they look like a supermodel skinny woman or something like that. And the man just falls in love because she's supermodel skinny. So I'm glad we've gotten a little bit farther down the road than that. And we're moving. The story is, of course, more than the differently able, but I will say for this particular story and for the representation for differently able, this is not a conventionally beautiful man. At least from the neck up, from the neck down.
For the
he
neck.
is hot. Hot. Okay, y'all. I mean, yes. But yeah, and the reactions and the all that other stuff that happens, and how he dealt with certain things in his life, that is what makes this representation work. That is what this makes him a round whole character to me, and what makes it not just beastly, that movie or whatever. So that's that. I could talk about Mr. Christopher Aho.
Oh yes, I feel like everybody, whether you've known it or not, y'all seen the cover of that book.
Oh, exactly. If you look on my Instagram, you know what? It's funny because when I showed the cover of that book on my Instagram, I got more likes on that post than I had ever gotten. I was like, oh, okay. We like him. Yes, I want to know who that model is, to be honest. But anyway, let's move on. And let's talk about A Match Made in Spain by R.L. Merrill. So we're still kind of in our physical different abilities. Jen, tell us a little bit about A Match Made in Spain.
Oh my gosh, this is such a charming book. This book is about a teacher who is going on a field trip to Spain for like 12 days with a bunch of kids. And she is actually the ASL teacher. The Spanish teacher was supposed to take these kids, and there's more than one chaperone in this group, but the Spanish teacher that was supposed to go fell and broke her pelvis. So obviously she cannot be wandering, taking kids all on these walking tours all over to, I think they go to 3 or 4 different cities. They do all these things. So the ASL teacher is tapped to go. She knows a lot of the kids because it's a small school. So they end up in Spain. And this is one of those books that hits so many joyful moments. First of all, we've all been sort of stuck inside, not going anywhere or seeing anything. And if you just want, a beautiful travelogue that talks about a really fascinating place to go see with beautiful architecture and interesting things to do, they go to this really amazing festival. I'm going to let you guys read the book so you find out more about the festival, but it sounds absolutely amazing. There's that kind of an experience that you can get through it, but it's also super funny because you're seeing this amazing architecture and these beautiful places sort of like through the lens of teenagers who are sometimes have just really interesting observations about the places that they are. So that just makes it really fun. And then sort of layered within all of that is this romance that happens. So our teacher, Cecilia, has, like I said, she's the ASL teacher and she has hearing loss. So she can hear a little bit, but not very well. This is a Grumpy Sunshine book. And one of the things I love about it is that our teacher is the grumpy one. Now, she's not grumpy, like mean or anything, but a lot of things happen to her right before the book opens that have definitely put her into a mood. So she is divorced, which is fine, but it's right at the end of the school year, and her ex-husband has announced, we need to sell the house immediately. Apparently that was kind of the plan overall, but he needs her out of the house ASAP so that they can get it ready to sell. She's like, oh my God. So if you can imagine how busy a teacher is at the very end of the school year, now she has to move out of her house. She's going to drop all of her stuff off at her mom's house. And then within just a few hours, she has to get on a plane with all these teenagers and go to Spain. And you're like, well, you're going to Spain. Yes, I'm going to Spain, but I'm going to Spain with all these teenagers. And it wasn't,
Right.
and I'm suddenly going to Spain. That wasn't the way I was planning to spend this week. I had other things on my agenda for this week. So although, certainly it's a lovely thing to get to go to Spain, but you can imagine with her life kind of, and all of her stuff just sort of turned upside down, that this is not the best timing for her. And so she's in a little bit of a mood. That one of the first things that happens as, they get to the airport. So all of that backstory that I just explained, all of that is sort of, it happens very quickly. There's very little about all of that. But she's in the airport and they have the meet cute, right? We have to have our sweet meet cute. Our hero in this story his name is Philippe. Philippe his family owns a winery, and he's in the airport too. And he's having a business meeting on the phone, and he's stressed out, and there's like decisions to be made. So the whole time that they are in line, he is on the phone and talking to his chief of staff person. Every time the line moves, he moves his suitcase and bumps into her every time he moves. But he's on the phone having this very serious conversation. And so she doesn't say anything. So on top of everything else that has gone on with her this week, this man
right,
just keeps bumping into her. And so she finally, they go through the line, and then what happens when she gets on the plane? Oh, look, that man is going to sit beside her. So now he's off the phone, and he is going to be Mr. Charming. He's like, oh, look at this cutie pie beside me. Ooh, I think I might have a nice little conversation. And she is having none of it. She is like, no, because
wow,
one of the kids has a nosebleed, one of the, that kind of thing. So she has a lot of other things on her mind. And that is one of the things that I found so charming about this book, is that our Philippe character could have easily been, sort of a stereotype. He's handsome and suave and charming, and he's so smart, and he's Spanish, and he knows about wine. He could just come in and sweep any woman off of her feet, right? Raise your hand if you are ready to be swept off your feet by a charming Spaniard man.
Of course.
But that is not where her mind is. That is not where her head is at all. And it has nothing to do with her ex. Her ex-husband has literally moved on. He's already living with his girlfriend. So she's pretty much over that part of it. But she has these kids to take care of. She has a lot of other stuff on her mind. And so Mr. Charming over here is just this is not part of the plan. And I need you to just kind of leave me alone. And he's not rude about it by any stretch of the imagination. It's not that, but it just makes for a really fun dynamic at the beginning of a romance novel. It's not love at first sight for anyone. It takes a little bit more. So yeah, so it makes it really fun. And there's a lot of little things that Rochelle has done to incorporate the hearing loss. Like I said, this is a teacher she knows a lot of the kids, but now they're in Spain where people speak Spanish, and she does not speak any Spanish. So she's at a little bit of a loss. Her hearing loss makes it so that she can't hear. She can't hear when there's a lot of people talking at once, like in a busy airport or like in a busy restaurant. And it also is difficult for her when things are very quiet. And that particular element, the fact that it's very difficult to speak quietly to her, that comes into play I don't want to ruin anything. Just know that there is a time when the two of them are alone and they are surrounded by kids. And Philippe kind of has a little bit of an idea that he's going to be Mr. Charming and be quiet and like whisper something to her. He says whatever he says to her, literally, she doesn't hear him. You can't whisper at somebody who has hearing loss. And she just kind of turns and looks at him and is like, oh, hi, I didn't see you standing there.
Oh boy.
So all of his charm is just like, whoop, it's
out
gone.
the window.
Out the window. So it makes it really fun. But it's a book that has so many lovely elements. Like I said, a lot of the travel that happens is great. We get to see the interactions with the kids who really keep things moving and keep things fun, but also sort of give a reason. She is not a person that is on vacation looking for a vacation romance. She is a person who has a job to do, but she is certainly charmed by this man. And one of the things that's charming about him is the way that he attempts to interact with the teenagers. And if you don't spend a whole lot of time with teenagers, that in and of itself is a huge challenge. So especially at the beginning when he's interacting with the kids, I should say there's a reason why he ends up joining the tour through a series of unfortunate events. He becomes the tour guide of this, which is not so weird because his brother owns the tour company. So that's how he ends up on this tour with them, because their tour guide is out of commission. So a lot of stuff happens there. But what's great is that as he is trying to interact with the kids, it is very difficult to be cute and charming and flirtatious when you are surrounded by teenagers. That is
very difficult to be anything but surly when you are surrounded by teenagers.
They're very sweet, but they notice everything. They seem to always be standing there. And so it's just a challenge. So, but all of that makes for their interactions to be that much more fun as they do kind of get to know each other, as they do start to develop feelings for each other and see each other in a different light. This is a book that is, like I said, it has the grumpy sunshine. We have the, travel to interesting places. We have a number of things that just make it really fun to read. This is on the other end of the steaminess feeling. So okay. This one is way the other end of the spectrum. For a lot of different reasons. Rochelle, I've read some of Rochelle's other books, and she can definitely do steam. So if you're looking for a steamy romance, you can definitely find that in some of her back catalog. This is a woman with lots of different things for you to read. You want to read a contemporary romance? She's got a few of those. You want to read a paranormal romance? She's got a few of those. You like horror books? Go read a horror book by R.L. Merrill. So there's lots of different things for you to read from her. But this particular book stayed on way on the not steamy portion of the spectrum.
Would you call it sweet steamy? Like off-page stuff, but maybe they say things that
I'm trying to remember, because there's a very good chance that there's no sex at all.
Okay.
There's one scene kind of towards the end, and it's been a couple of months since I've read the book. So, and I was trying to remember, I'm like, wait a minute, but I don't think that I don't think that would count as a sex scene. So it may be a zero sex book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we finally got something that's in like the sweet category, or maybe even the sweet steamy category. Okay, good.
So it's off page. If there's anything even implied, it's definitely an off page situation. So, which gives it, just a little bit of a different feel. Cause I'm with you. I like a steamy romance. I like my steam. I like to see characters interacting that way. And especially in a contemporary romance, when we see, for these two in this particular story, in this particular situation, there's a lot of reasons why they can't just be alone.
Right.
And also there's a lot of reasons for them to not want to be together at all. He literally lives in Spain. She literally lives in California. How much of a commitment can you really make when you know that you live on different continents?
Right.
And that's something that sort of like hangs over the two of them, as much as they enjoy getting to know each other, and as nice as it is to sort of feel that attention from a very handsome, very charming man. It can also sort of be like, what am I really doing here? What am I really thinking? And figuring out what it is that she wants to do as a result of that. So, but don't worry, it is a romance. There is a solution. So I should also say,
there is.
One of the things that I also love, the kids play a couple of different roles In the book, like I said, they're considered comic relief. They create a certain amount of not cock block exactly, because but they are definitely in the way of them getting to know each other. Her mother is such a fun character, and so I highly recommend everybody just read the book, just so that you can get the mom interactions that happen both via text
awesome.
and over the phone. So yeah, her mom is somebody that I want to hang out with. So
Cool.
yes.
I just want to make sure everybody knows that one is A Match Made in Spain by Rochelle Merrill, who also writes as R.L. Merrill.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. And it sounds like a good one. In that same vein, I also have another recommendation as well for a romantic women's fiction book called Have We Met? Information about that will be in the show notes. And so that's kind of in the same vein as far as physical difference abilities. So now we're actually coming to a portion of our episode, which I'm going to deem the Talia Hibbert Love Fest. The reason why is because, well, we love Talia Hibbert, let's be honest. We want to recommend several books in our theme that Talia has written. Well, I've heard her say this several times, that she is, I think she said she's on the spectrum or neurodivergent, or something of that nature. She said it in a couple of different ways. She's written several books from that perspective, which we are going to talk about. And first off, we're actually going to talk about book 3 in her Ravenswood series, called That Kind of Guy. We're also going to talk about a little bit about book 1 of that series, A Girl Like Her. The Ravenswood series has been around for a while. I think most people, when they hear the name Talia Hibbert, they think Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and that is not her first book, everybody. She's got a lot of books out there, and she's been writing for a while before Chloe Brown. So we're going to start off with Ravenswood, the Ravenswood series, That Kind of Guys, book 3. And Staci's going to tell us about that particular book. Hey, Staci.
Hello. Well, I read that book, That Kind of Guy. And if you've read the series, the two main characters, one of them has been a character in all of the other series as a supporting character. Two main characters are Ray, which is the woman, and I think they do mention that she might be slightly plus size. She's not with any of Talia Hibbert's. A lot of her female characters are not the perfect body kind of thing.
Yeah.
They sound real. Ray, in this particular book, Ray is an author. She's new to the town, and she does have facial scarring, and it doesn't really make who she is. It's not something she grew up with, the facial scarring. You find out later that it happened by an accident. She's also a little bit different. She's older than the romantic interest, so that's different too in itself. She's older than him. She has facial scarring, and that really doesn't define her, which I really like. That wasn't something that defines her at all. And the main character, he's younger, and his name is Zach. So Ray is the woman, and Zach is the male lead in the story. And we find out that he's a demisexual, which I never knew about. Never heard of a demisexual before. And basically, those people who have to have a emotional bond or before they're sexually attracted to someone. And if you read some of the other stories about that character, Zach, you wouldn't think that was, but he also talks about him discovering himself being that demisexual. It has several tropes in the book. It talks about one of them is that friends to lovers, because they are friends first, because if he's demisexual, he really wouldn't feel that sexual attraction unless they were friends first. So you have that friends to lovers, and then you also have kind of a fake relationship thing that happens too. Within this book, I really enjoy Talia Hibber's book because of the fact that it's not super steamy, and
Mm-hmm.
I like a steamy romance, but she has like, okay, you're gonna get a scene, but it's like this build up, and you
Yeah.
really start to feel for the characters long before you know that something's going to happen with them, but you really more anticipate it before it actually finally happens. You
Yep.
anticipate it, and you can't wait. Come on, get together, and they finally do, and it's great. But you know that it's going to be several chapters in, sometimes more than halfway through the book, close to the end, and their whole story and plot line, you just are really into it because it's one of those. It's also a misunderstanding thing. Like, she's new to the town, but she's heard about his history, and if you've read any of the other books, you realize that he is kind of like the town slut for a while there. Part of that, if you read it, is that his discovery of himself and why he's sleeping with different people had nothing to do with his sexual attraction, but he was also that ugly duckling, just so you have a whole lot of different tropes in this one book.
Yeah.
Friends to lovers, fake relationship, but also we talk about his history, like he was that nerdy kid, that nerdy guy, didn't get no interest from women or anything like that until he starts to develop and looks nice. And then women are coming on to him. And then he's like, okay, start sleeping with just about anybody. And then him discovering that he's doing it because people want him, not because he wants them.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
so it has a lot of different layers in it. And him trying to understand now that he's discovered by being a demisexual, what he is, trying to discover himself. And I talk about him a lot, but Ray has her own thing going on because she's, number one, older than him. She's divorced. She's had this facial scarring, which came later in life. So it wasn't something she was raised with. She doesn't really, it's not her whole being, but she is a little at times not embarrassed, but sometimes she's aware of it because she knows when people see her at first, they kind of notice the scars on the side of her face. It's not her whole face, but one side of her face. And you figure, and they also talk about that she has this condition as well. So he's a demisexual. She has this health condition that if you've ever stood up too fast and you get lightheaded, but she actually is more serious than that for her. And that's what actually caused an accident to have the facial scarring. But overall, it's just a really good story. Talia always does a great story. And you really enjoy the cast, but you enjoy the characters in the story and they're just development, their inner turmoil, she realizes she's older than him and he doesn't seem like he's interested, but he's trying to discover himself. And is he really interested? Is it because she wants him or does he really want her? It's a lot that goes on in that
Wow.
book. It's just a great read. It really is. I enjoy
Yeah.
it. I've read the whole series, that Ravenswood series. That was probably one of the better ones I like them all, but that really stuck with me, that one.
Yep. And that one, it looks like that one's at the end of the series. So
No,
she's
that's actually one more she
there's one
did.
more. Okay.
It's not really part. It is in that world. I wouldn't call it the Ravenswood series, but it's part of that world. And she's a side character that we noticed in the first two, and she appears on that. And she's in that last one.
So I have a question, and now that we're talking characters, so is Zach the same Zach from the first book, A Girl Like Her? Is it the same Zach?
Yeah, Zach is the character that is the
with
friend,
the mom, the friend of Evan. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
friend of Evan, who's the mom, and then the second book is with his brother.
Okay.
Zach's brother is in the second one.
Okay. All right.
And
So that's how they're connected. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Everybody in there is connected, and all four books they're connected.
Yeah, because this is everybody. This Ravenswood is a small town, so everybody knows everybody.
Pretty much.
Yeah. But in this particular way, yeah, they're all kind of connected in some ways. Like I think Ruth and Hannah are sisters, and isn't Ruth and Hannah is in one of the books? Okay.
Okay, so yeah, Ruth and Hannah are sisters. Ruth, I believe that's the first one, A Girl Like Her.
Yeah.
Her love interest works in the blacksmith shop, and that's how he meets Zach. And that's Zach from the third book. And then the second book, Hannah, which is Ruth's sister, has a relationship that is about with Zach's brother. And that's that one. And there, the fourth book, it's not really a Ravenswood, but it's in that same series, the same universe, called Damaged Goods.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she's listing, I think that one came out after all of them, but she's listing it as book 1.5. But that one actually came out after it. All of the rest of them did. But yeah, Talia is wow. You're right. Yeah, she's just wonderful. Y'all, we just gonna love on Talia Hibbert right now. So sorry, everybody. She's just wonderful.
I started the series, all these Talia Hibbert books, because of you made a suggestion, and I started one of the Ravenswood books. Then I did read. Let's talk about the Brown sister books. There, I really like the fact that it's that slow burn that there's gonna happen. But it's only one scene. In a lot of romance books, I tend to if I'm going to go for a romance, a lot of times it's going to be steamy. And it's steamy all the way through. But hers are just, because of the character development, you don't notice it that it's taking so long to get to that stage. I've listened to some of hers because when I travel, when I drive and all that, I like to have, an audio book or something like that. I've listened to it for like almost 5 hours on one of the Brown sisters, and nothing has happened, nothing really steamy. We know you anticipate, and there's some scenes that are spicy, I guess, sweet, but not the full shebang. and I'm like 5 hours into it, and I'm still enjoying it. So that tells you a lot, at least from my perspective here.
Yeah, I mean, from anybody's perspective, I will give a caveat though, that because for some reason people think not steamy equals okay language. That's not necessarily the case. Yes, she gives you a few F words. She's talking like they're talking like real young folks. Real young folks do nowadays when they're not around their parents necessarily. But you're right. A lot of hers are like, it's slow burn, it's layered characters, which makes a lot of her books so enjoyable. And the fact that you do not really think of them as, oh wow, this book has a character with facial scarring, or oh wow, this book has a demisexual in it, or in the case of with Danny Brown is bisexual. In that book, Raph has anxiety, right? And so that's not really what the books are about. You see, because these characters are so layered, these people.
I totally agree with you on that. I mean, you feel like you know them, but also they feel just really real.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's first time I read one of her books, it's like, gosh, these people seem like real people.
Right.
Versus if you've read I love Bridgerton, and I like the that TV show, but that whole historic romance, nobody ever actually feels real
to you.
They've got there's something going on, issues, but they tend to be perfect people. Just nothing's really wrong with me. There's no physical, mental, there's nothing really going on except what's there might be something going on in the background, but there's nothing wrong with them in a way.
Exactly. Or there's something going on with a side character.
Yes, but they're fine.
But they're right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no, it's the first time I've ever read in her books where, there were people who were on the spectrum. Like you said, anxiety. It's like, wow, someone who has crippling anxiety, which was different. Every one of her books I have enjoyed. So let me leave it at that. I love her. She's great.
She's great. She's great. And we'll talk. We're talking a couple of more of her titles, and we're gonna stay in the Ravenswood series with A Girl Like Her. We're gonna talk A Girl Like Her and Eve Brown. I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about A Girl Like Her, and Jen and Staci, you know, kind of chime in if you want. Jen and Staci have both read A Girl Like Her, maybe a little bit later, a little bit earlier than I have. So I kind of remember a few things about A Girl Like Her. But this one, the female main character, Ruth, is on the spectrum. Actually, no, she is autistic. She says, I'm autistic. Plain out. And it's funny when she says that, I'm autistic, because it's not like, dum dum, I'm autistic. Oh, now this is a book about an autistic. No, it's just like she's just saying, this is a fact, deal with it. And she's saying this to her eventual love interest, who's also her neighbor, Evan. He's like, okay, you know, all right, let's move on. All right, it's more so like she's using that as an explanation, but he doesn't see her as autistic, right? He sees her as this woman whose personality is X, Y, and Z. She's a little bit rude, she's blunt, and she's passionate. He really mentions things like she's passionate and she's really into certain things. And he knows this, of course, because he actually talked to the woman, unlike her ex, who did not really talk to her. And this is the thing about books. I'm just going to kind of say this in general. This is the thing about books with people who are marginalized. We don't live our lives as marginalized people. All of us may be marginalized in some way. You know, I'm a Black plus size middle-aged female. So, you know, I'm marginalized in several ways there. But you don't live your life like that. It's there. You know it's there. It's something that you deal with, but you do not live your life that way. And I love books that, if that's there, we see their lives and how they live with whatever that thing is, but that is not who they are. And that's why a layered character, and that's why I think she's just great at this. And that's why a lot of her characters have a lot of stuff going on, because she layers those characters so well that we're like, okay, this is just somebody we know. Because everybody we know is different in some way, right? You know,
I totally agree with you.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, I really agree with you on her characters. They are so layered, and how you say that, you know, you're a marginalized Black plus sized woman. And I was like, clutch the pearls, middle aged. We're both the same age. But you're right, because a lot of books, they're like, oh,
I feel like
what,
I got at least 10 more years before I'm middle aged, but that's not what society says. So
yeah, but I mean, because I don't wake up thinking, oh yes, I'm Black today and I'm fat today. I mean, I don't
you don't
wake up,
right,
you know, brushing my teeth to that. But you know, when you go out in the world, some things, you know, you will show you that that's what people may see you as, but that's not. We wake up, hey, my name is Staci. That's who I am. And her characters are like that. You don't see she's just autistic character.
right.
You see her name is Ruth. You know, she does this,
Exactly.
and this. You know, it really is. Her characters are really well written.
Yeah.
And sorry if I kind of jumped in there. So
no, I'm totally with you on that. And feel free, jump in as much as you want, because like I said, this is a love fest right now. We just going off book. We going straight love fest here. But yeah, and a girl like her, you know, she is autistic, and we don't really, you don't even really feel that from the moment that you meet her and you're in her head, right? And I think that's genius to me. If you're going to have an autistic character, make that autistic character the protagonist. We're in her head, and we're seeing her thought processes. For me, some of the way that she's thinking is like, oh my gosh, I think like that too. And yes, I do go off book. And like every now and then I'm like, I have to remember the steps. Like she was remembering what the steps were because Evan was so close to her, and the sensation of him being close to her, you know, she was like, I was supposed to be doing XYZ. And so you don't know if that necessarily has to do with her being autistic and not remembering stuff, because she does have a tendency to go off book. And that has to do with her being autistic. She does have a tendency not to remember certain things because her mind goes somewhere else. But it's like we all have felt that way. Like you get around, you know, somebody you're attracted to, and you're like, oh, I think I forgot what I was doing. I literally do think I forgot what I was doing. So when you have a character like that, you're in that character's mind. You know, you're seeing some day-to-day things, and you just kind of see thought patterns happening and things like that. It just, you feel like you're kind of connected in a way, because I feel like there are certain moments in my life where I felt the same way. And no, I'm not autistic, but you understand, okay, this is how we're moving through life, and you realize, wow, we're not really that different. Some of us move through life in slightly different ways, but on the whole, we're not really that different. That's what makes those characters real to me. But there are allusions to, and if I remember, there's not actually a domestic violence scene in it, I think, unless it's in flashback, but there are trigger warning kind of things in this book.
I don't think there's a physical, there is more
isn't a
emotional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so those are in kind of remembrances and in flashbacks, but it is there for those who are a little bit sensitive to that. It's a Talia Hibbert book, so it is steamy, and their love scenes are steamy, but it is not erotic level. It's got 2 good steamy scenes in it, and maybe some descriptions of other scenes, but not full-on scenes. And so it's mostly kind of a slow burn, and you get that kind of intensity between the hero and heroine, which I love. She's dealing with these characters. You know, Jen, Staci, let's talk a little bit how funny these books are. And these, you know, she does romantic comedy so well. I mean,
oh my gosh, I love Talia Hibbert Brooks. Her character development is amazing. It's absolutely amazing because it seems so subtle and so natural that you don't even notice that that's what she's doing. She really gets into their head and, you know, sort of takes you along on what they're thinking about and how they feel about stuff. And it gives you such great insight into who this person is, that they feel like people, not characters, not words on a page. They feel like people,
right?
And you so quickly become completely invested in them because you're reading their thoughts and how they would react to something. And even so, the book I read was Act Your Age, Eve Brown, which is the 3rd book in the series. But
yeah, the Brown Sisters series.
Brown Sisters.
Yeah.
Series. And the Eve Brown character at the beginning of the book, she's kind of a hot mess. You know,
yes.
It's a person that has, she's 26 years old and she's had a number of jobs. And if you're not familiar with the Brown sisters, they are literal sisters, not figurative sisters. Their parents are quite well off. So they have plenty of money. And so the fact that she's a hot mess hasn't really had a huge impact on her. And by hot mess, I just mean that she's somebody who really can't hold a job. She sort of like flits around to different things. She has tried a number of things. And so within the first chapter, her mom is berating her because she just planned this really beautiful wedding. The book literally begins with, it's been 8 days since so-and-so's wedding. And there's a whole thing that happened with the doves we won't go into right now, but there's a whole thing. And because of this one thing that happened with the doves, she decided to just quit her business completely. So in those within those 8 days, she took down her website, canceled all of her social media accounts. She's just no longer an event planner. And so the book opens when her mom has found out about this, because somebody that was at the wedding thought it was really fantastic, found out Eve was the one that organized it, and wanted to hire her to do something, and was like, oh, hey, her website's down. And she's like, Eve, what just happened? She goes, well, over the course of the book, you kind of find out that she has this concern about failing at things, and that she has this impression of herself that she is accidentally good at something. So she can do it once,
Right.
but she can't do it twice.
Right. Yeah.
If anybody has ever sort of had that feeling, a lot of authors have imposter syndrome. They feel like their writing will never be as good as somebody else's writing. There's so many other people that are better writers than I am, that type of thing. And a lot of people feel that in other areas of their life, whatever their profession is, that somebody's going to figure it out, that they're just not great at anything. And that's kind of where she is. So that's what I mean by kind of hot mess, because her family has money, she hasn't really had any consequences to the fact that she doesn't hold a job. She chooses to leave them.
Mm-hmm.
Her mom calls her on the carpet about it in that first chapter. And you feel it. You feel that she says something like, I'm super disappointed in you, blah, blah, blah. And then there's kind of a pause, and she goes, it's just so embarrassing. And you're in Eve's head, and she's like, ow, that is the comment that like hits her straight in the heart. You don't want to be that person who's like the embarrassment of the family, right? And there's so much to it, and just the way that she puts those scenes together. And like I said, this all happens in the first chapter. You learn so much about who she is, what her relationship is with her mom. I did something with this book that I do not do, and that is I read book 3, but I have not read book 1 or book 2. So I don't know. I came into this not knowing anything about the family dynamics.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Because I was going to say something about the sisters, but okay, I won't say it then.
No, that's okay. They do eventually make an appearance in here, and they do have a good relationship. Like they have a group text with the 3 sisters and that type of thing. So they're definitely a little bit in there, but what happens because of this discussion that she has with her mom and her dad, he's there as well. But they decide that they're going to kick her out of the house in 3 months. So she has to find a job. She needs to find a job and hold a job for a year. Otherwise, she's not going to gain access to her trust fund, because they understand that can be a challenge, because her resume is a mess. She doesn't hold jobs for very long, and they know that that's going to make it difficult for her to find a job. So they're like, well, you can come work at mom's place or dad's place. And she's like, I guess mom is a lawyer and dad is an accountant. And neither of those are things that appeal to her.
Right.
So she does the not very mature thing, which is she gets in her car and just drives away. And that's how the book starts. Yeah.
It's so fun. I'm sorry. So I'm sorry, Jen. I got to put it in. I can't wear this love fest. This is the funniest. You're hearing Jen, and this is what happens in chapter 1, and all of that is true. But this is the funniest book ever.
Oh my God, the stuff that comes out of her mouth. The stuff that comes out of her mouth. Oh my God. It just makes me so happy.
I know. It's just so funny. This is just a personal thing. I'm not a fan of slapstick. I'm not a fan of that physical comedy. I love the dry wit, which is why I love Talia here, because she does it so well. She does that dry wit thing, that sarcastic banter that just makes she does that so well, and I'm just like,
she does.
It's amazing. But there are several scenes that are just straight slapstick, and they are hilarious. They are just totally hilarious. And oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to get this book but to make sure that I'm not totally giving something away. So yes, I'm totally not giving this away, because it's literally on the back of the book. Okay. Right? She hits Jacob with the car. That whole scene where she hits him with her, and she just met this man. This is like on her quest to find this job that Jen's talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And she's literally just met this man, and she ends up hitting the dude with her car. That whole scene. Now
Oh
that's
my God.
that shouldn't be in general. No, please don't go out and hit anyone with your car just for no, please don't do that. Don't do that. I'm not advocating that at all. But the scene in this book where she does that is hilarious. Oh my
Oh
God.
my God. So in that scene, we're in Jacob's POV, and yes, I died.
Yes.
I died. I'm also, I don't usually listen to audiobooks, but I listened to this one on audiobook, and I had to rewind it and go back and listen to it again, because I was just like, what is happening right now? And fantastic.
Yeah.
It is absolutely fantastic the way that scene all comes together, and how he just, how he crumples, and there's love it. Just love that scene. And there's so many things like that in the book, where it's like you're in this up close, just really, the scenes are very detailed, the things that they're like, physically what they're doing, what they're thinking about, what they're saying out loud, how that conversation is moving forward. She is able to juggle all those things so effortlessly and just so deftly that it makes reading her books so much fun.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I'm actually looking for once. Actually, for her whole series, I actually have the physical books. I don't do that a lot, but yeah, I'm looking at my copy of this book, and I remember I actually was reviewing this one, and I marked all the pages where I laughed out loud, and this book looks so I have little stickies everywhere where this book has been. I may take a picture and put that on the show notes, but it's like this book is just like marked up everywhere where I laughed out loud. And then I've got this one big sticky. I don't know what that is, but I think that whole scene was probably laugh out loud. But
yeah,
most people that may have heard of Talia Hibbert recently, or just heard of Talia Hibbert, have heard of her through these books, the Brown Sisters trilogy. Maybe even started with Chloe Brown, maybe not even moved past Chloe Brown. I see a lot of Chloe Brown covers all over social media, but I don't necessarily see Eve Brown's cover over social media as I do with Chloe's book. And I really encourage everybody, you've got to get this book. Actually, all three of the books are great. But definitely get Eve Brown's book.
Yeah. So we're talking about folks that are differently abled, and Talia Hibbert is one of those authors that does those kinds of characters just really, really phenomenally. So Jacob, in the first scene when we meet him, maybe like one of the first 5 things out of his mouth, because he's sort of stumbling a little bit over his words, and he knows that he comes across that he knows that he comes across very aggressive sometimes. He just straight out says that he's autistic. He sort of apologizes for whatever it was that came out of his mouth and said, "Oh, sorry, I'm autistic." And then he just like keeps rolling forward with what it is that he's trying to do. His deal is that he needs to replace his chef. He had a chef quit on him because she won the lotto and just wanted to move to Scotland or what have you. So she is on her way to do that. And he needs a replacement ASAP. So that's what she walks into, what Eve Brown walks into. What is really interesting in this book, and I don't want to like give it away, but one of the reasons I read this book is that I was looking very specifically for a heroine with autism, because this is April, it is Autism Awareness Month, and so I have a daughter that's autistic, and I really wanted to talk about a heroine. And there's lots of heroes that are out there, and which is pretty typical because boys tend to be diagnosed more often than girls are on the autism spectrum. But what happens in this book, which is really, really beautiful, is that Jacob is sort of a little bit more of a standard, the type of autistic that we would normally be able to recognize pretty easily. He's male. He's aware that he's not great socially. He's aware that he has to sort of make up for the fact that he can be come across as rude, and he tries to recognize that. His office is super organized and laid out in a very specific way for him. And that's how we normally think about autistic people. Whereas Eve does not have a diagnosis. And in the course of the book, there's some things that come out that give her reason to Google autism. And what she finds is that when she looks closely at a lot of the symptoms that are out there, she's like, oh, hey, wait a minute. This might be, there might be something that's going on here with me, but she's not terribly interested in getting like an official diagnosis, which is also very different than what we see from a lot of folks where they really want like an answer, but it's just not who she is and not what she wants out of life. She really just kind of wants to be, her goal really is to just be happy. She wants to be proud of herself and be happy with herself. And I think that is a beautiful thing. And a beautiful way to kind of live your life in general, right? Don't we all want to be proud of ourselves? And don't we all just want to be happy with ourselves and the choices that we make? So I thought this, and so when Talia Hibbert is describing Eve, there's a number of different things that are incorporated. And it's sort of like if you know about autism and you know about autism from a female perspective, you can totally see sort of where this is going. But it's definitely not the type of autistic character that we normally see. And to see her on that journey of learning about herself and learning to be a little bit more self-aware in ways that she hasn't had to in the past, partially because of, she had money. So there were certain things that didn't impact her, but she was also surrounded by a very loving family that accepted her for who she was. And so because of that, you kind of feel like you're not necessarily standing out. And where girls on the autism spectrum tend to not stand out. They tend to be very capable of masking and sort of pretending to be something that they necessarily aren't. It really tracks so well with the experience of a lot of women that are on the autism spectrum. I thought that was a really fantastic way to just sort of diversify what it is that we see and how we see folks that are on the spectrum, because she's really good at certain things, like really, really good. I can't imagine trying to organize a wedding. And we start off knowing that she successfully organized a wedding. And that is a huge, huge accomplishment. And the fact that she doesn't even see it as that is really fascinating.
Right. Exactly. Too, when you're comparing this one to a girl like her, these are both women who are on the spectrum or autistic, but very different representations. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that Talia does that in her books. They're very different representations, because autism is not, okay, this is autism. We can look at it. This is what it is. We can point it out and we can put this person in this box. And that's not what it's about. And I love the fact that we have these different representations, and that Talia Hibbert, this author, is writing, all these different representations, and is there herself, so it's coming from an authentic place as well.
Exactly. The authenticity that she puts in for not only for the diagnosis, but just that people are so much more than their diagnosis, just means a whole lot.
Right, exactly. Both you and Staci have mentioned audiobooks, and I have not listened to an audiobook, a Talia Hibbert audiobook. Are we recommending the audiobooks even over necessarily the book? And what do we think? I have heard about some of her narrators being very authentic to what we think, as we're reading, or as we're listening, we think the voice of these characters, and her narrators do that very well, or her narrator does that very well. Yes, no?
Well, I listened to I was trying to see which one it was for me. Take a Hint, Danny Brown, as an audiobook. It was very good. I've had a few of different authors. I've listened to a few different audiobooks from different authors. Some of them haven't, one particular was not good at all. But but for that one, Take a Hint, Danny Brown, it was really good. Of course, it's always good to Talia Hibbert book is good anyway, but yeah, your narrators can help you stay into the book. And for me, if I listen to you going for my entire trip, and then once I get to where I needed to go to, I was driving to Birmingham there. And if I get out of the book, get out of the car, and I'm at my destination, and I'm still listening to you, then it is a really good book if I'm doing it at that point.
Yeah.
And hers was like that. So I got out of the car, and then, as I'm going about my day, I still listen to the book to finish it. If I wait for it till I get back in the car to return back home, then it might be a okay book. But if it's really great, I'm listening to it even after I get out of the car. And for her books, I have always, for that one book, I got out of the car and then I'm still listening to it. The narrators for those books for that one was really good.
The one for Act Your Age was awesome. Act Your Age, Eve Brown. I looked it up. Ione Butler, Ione Butler was absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And she does some different voices, but just because of the way the book goes, it's mostly just Jacob. And
who was the narrator you said for that book?
Ione, Ione Butler.
Okay, she's the same. That was the same person for the Take a Hint, Danny Brown too.
Okay, great.
So yeah. She must be got the whole trilogy. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard that I'm assuming this is she. Yes.
Yes.
Is very good and actually authentically, or does the voices, because as you're reading the Brown sisters books, I think maybe at least one or two of her family is Afro-Caribbean or something of that nature. I think the grandma is. I'm not sure, but but they're all in all of these books. The whole family is in all of these books at some point. And so it's interesting. We had to do a bit of a love fest for Talia Hibbert because she does have a lot of differently abled characters, and she's done a lot more than Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Okay, so go and read some of these other books that we talked about. She has a lot more out there, and they're just entertaining stories, everyone. Thank you to my guest hosts, Dana, Jen, Staci. Thank you for hanging out with me. This is probably another one of our extra long episodes, but I just love talking romance books with you guys. I just love talking interesting stories with y'all. Thank you for hanging out with me for this episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So that's it for this episode. Please subscribe to Nerdy Romantics Podcast wherever you get your podcast to be notified anytime a new episode drops. And if you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. The links are in my show notes at ymnelson.com, along with a lot of other links for books and other items that we talked about on our show. And if you really like what you're hearing, click the Buy Me a Coffee button while you're there to support us. Thank you for listening.